Good morning. Today we are going to take the poem that is called Harlem, which was written by Langston Hughes. Okay, let's take a quick background about the poet Langston Hughes. Just so you know, his full name was James Mercer Langston Hughes. He was born in February 1st, 1902 in Dublin, United States of America, and he died in May 22nd, 1967 in New York. And he was an American writer who was an important figure in the Harlem Renaissance and made the African American experience the subject of his writings, which ranged from poetry and plays to novels and newspapers columns. His parents separated soon after his birth, and he was raised by his mother and his grandmother. After his grandmother died, of course, he and his mother moved to half a dozen cities before reaching to the place where they have settled, and that was called Cleveland. To talk very quickly about the poem Harlem, this title was taken or it was given to this poem after a New York neighborhood that became the center of Harlem Renaissance, a major creative explosion, in music. In not only music, but music, literature, and art. That also occurred during the 1910s and 1920s. Many African Americans families saw Harlem as a sanctuary from the frequent discrimination they faced other parts of the country. They faced in other parts of the country, actually. Unfortunately, Harlem's, the poem, or Harlem's himself, glamours faded in the beginning of the 1930s when the Great Depression set in, leaving many of the American or the African American families who had prospered in the Harlem destituted once more. Okay, let's quickly read this poem. It is very easy, and we are going to explain it in details. What happened to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or feaster like a sore? And then run, does it stink like rotten meat? Or crust and sugar over like a syrup sweet? Maybe it's just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? So this is the poem. Let's explain line by line very quickly. The first line, it says, what happened to a dream deferred? Well, if we were to answer these questions right away, we would probably say that nothing much. Mr. Speaker, it will probably just fade away. So it will just go away. But there is something about the way our speaker says dream deferred, instead of saying deferred dream. So that makes us realize that we are not in the world of logical, rotational, but rather the far cooler world of poetry, truth-telling, and soul-searching. By the beginning of this poem, with a question, we as a readers are put on the spot. So this is the first line and how we explain this first line. Let's go to the second line when he said, does it dry away? So this part where he says, does it dry away? Okay, does it dry away? What happens when this dry up? Or actually what happens when things dry up? They lose their moisture and their water, they become small and they become dirty, maybe they become smelly. This line makes us think of deserts and summer and heat and hot, and even we noticed each of the words in this line only contains one syllable. So coming to the third line here, like a raisin in the sun, okay? Just we want to highlight this part, this line where it says, like a raisin in the sun. Raisins are supposed to be dry, okay? And that's what we already know. They become raisin by sitting in the sun Well, actually, raisin begin as grapes and gradually loses their juice when they are put out in the sun. So this actually the same thing when we said things dry. What happens to things when they dry? That's the same point. So when things dry up, they lose the, as we said previously, their moisture, their water, and they become small in size even. Well, if we say here, the grapes also here loses its juice when they're put out in the sun. Raisins are totally delish and tasty. So they're delicious and tasty. So, but they are not quite as succulent as grape. In our humble opinion, or actually in my humble opinion, that's what I think. Like famous American playwriters Lauren Hansberry took the phrase "a raisin in the sun" as the title of her play. A Raisin in the Sun. This is the title of her play actually. This play quickly becomes one of the most beloved works in American theaters, as it captures the deferred dreams of Black family living in Chicago during the 1950s. So jumping to the next line, which is called, "Are feasters like a sore?" Well, feaster, whenever we hear this word, we can't help but think of an open wound full of pus and blood. Sorry, usually things feastered when they aren't healing or when they aren't being cared for properly. Here, our speaker suggests a deferred dream won't heal or go away. So this is his expression about the word that feaster, that it's not going to heal at all. Jumping to the fifth line, "and then run." And then run here comes as a question. We know that our speaker is continuing with the good image here, wondering if dreams bleed themselves to death, if they are going to ignore or they're going to be ignored actually. However, there's something very powerful about the word "run" here. So when he mentioned the word "run" here, there is something really very powerful here. We can't help but think about our meaning or about other meanings for it, meaning like escape, or we can change it by escape, or we can change it by flow maybe. Well, this is just an option for it. Looking at the sixth line that it says, "Does it stink like a rotten meat?" Well, here, if dreams are stashed away, will they haunt us like a rotten meat? Haunt us when it sits too long in the refrigerator. So things rot like a meat and then starts to have a smell or something like that. The next line says, the next line is, "or crust and sugar over." What kind of things crust a sugar or sugar over are like honey, cheese, candy, usually things that they are left or you can leave them out in the open air. And they aren't put away properly. So can dreams be, so if you just notice here throughout the poem, he is just talking about the dreams that he has, and the dreams do not run away or do not go away. He is just like giving it a simile or personification, kind of personification here, but it's more like a simile. Okay, next is like a syrup sweet. So here he reminds us of the pancakes and the sticky hands and the things that are sugary more, and he is trying to explain it as sweet, something sticky, something that sticks with us for a long time and never fade away. We're going to jump to the last line, which is a very important line, where it says, "or does it explode?" Well, here there is like an opposite situation or an opposite explanation to what we have said before. Just like the first line of this poem, this final line is a question all by itself, but unlike any other line in the poem. So it is, as you can see, this makes us pay extra careful attention to it. The word "explode" seems to us to be both a very dangerous verb and a very celebratory verb. So we should just notice this part that he's trying to track our attention by even changing the bold or making the word explode in a different handwriting or a different yes, handwriting, as they say. He utilizes it. Okay, so finally we have only one word here, one vocabulary in this poem, which is called deferred. And deferred already means to force to change something or delay or pause or stop, especially because of an obstacle. I hope I have given a very clear explanation to this poem, Harlem, which is written by Langston Hughes. Thank you so much.